This is episode 25 of Standing Out. Standing Out is a remarkable interview-style podcast with the intention to highlight women and men making outstanding contributions in their field. This podcast is generously sponsored by Think Global. Think Global is a business advisory firm working with women entrepreneurs around the globe to scale their businesses to the next level. Today, I'd like to welcome Carolyn Munoz. Before accepting a position at a Fortune 500 company as a social media strategist for recruiting, she owned and operated C Designs, a boutique agency in Denver, for over 20 years. She has almost 30 years of experience in marketing, advertising, and public relations, art direction, and brand management. Starting from scratch with a mere $1,200 in the bank, she grew an agency to $1 million in billing within the first 2 years. The agency successfully provided marketing and advertising services for B2B and B2C clients, working in healthcare, golf, sportswear, manufacturing, home design, entertainment, the arts and artists, associations, real estate, financial planning, nonprofits, and radio broadcast media. Carolyn, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
So the other thing that I didn't get to in your bio is that you are, is it one of 10 children in your family?
Yes, I am the oldest girl of 10 children. I have an older brother, but of course, in a Latino family, you are you're the one when you're the oldest. So I have 8 younger siblings.
And what's 8 younger siblings. And what's interesting is on the personal side of your bio, you also mentioned that your mom was chose a career path long before that was sort of a mainstream thing. And I would love to know how that inspired you in some of your choices.
She did. She went to work for an oil company when we were living in Oklahoma as a translator and as an executive secretary. She was one of the first secretaries to learn how to use a computer at work. And so that was very inspiring because I always sort of pushed back when she said, you need to learn how to type. And I said, no, I don't want to learn how to type. I do not want to be a secretary. But instead of, being the, rebellious child that I wanted to be, I took her advice and I took typing, and I learned a lot about, how to manage things in a business. I took some business courses in high school and then when I was in college, although I never saw myself as being an entrepreneur at all. And it was sort of that underlying thing that my mother did just to encourage me to do whatever it is I wanted to do and to work with whatever my passion was, because she had not been able to do as much of that as she would have liked to.
So that's really interesting. When you started your own firm with $1,200 in the bank, did you start like, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm doing this? Or like, what was the catalyst for that?
Well, the catalyst was that I had come out of a publishing company that was just brutal. The pay wasn't very good. And of course, they talk about equal pay right now, but you have no idea what it was like in the 80s to work as a career woman, because there were very few opportunities to have a high-paying job. It didn't matter if you had an education. It was just sort of the way things were back then. And I was very tired of really killing myself and not seeing any reward from that.
Right.
So I decided to open my own, starting out as a freelance business. And then because I got so busy and got so many clients, I ended up just making an operation that had employees. So it became a real, honest-to-goodness business.
That's amazing. And that's actually very similar to my own story in that I honestly, in my early 20s, didn't even know what entrepreneurship was. And so I never set out to do that, but was in a similar situation. Like I didn't like the current system of feeling underpaid and overworked, and thought I could do better on my own as a freelancer. And it worked. And then we needed more team members to help us deliver on that work. So that's a really interesting.
Absolutely.
So what do you think your secret sauce was to grow your company so quickly?
My secret sauce was really the fact that, when I started college, I had gotten a theater scholarship. So, of course, my aspiration was to be in acting, and I was, singing, dancing, acting. And I think that was probably one of the best training sessions I had for getting up in front of an audience and pitching my work. It was a lot like acting, and I mean, it still is. So I think that was really the secret sauce for me.
That is so interesting. I think as business owners now, I think there are two things that I feel like we don't talk about as much, and there is so much writing in this field, and then so much improv or performance of being in front of people and being able to pitch yourself and confidently standing in front of an audience, or whether it's one person or 10 or 100.
Exactly. And it even happens to you when you're in a networking situation, right, with people that you have not met before. You don't know anything about them, and you go back and forth and ask each other questions, but you are really putting your work face on in those situations. And I think that, the training that I got was really helpful for that, because it allowed me to, sort of center myself and say, this is who I am as a professional, and you're going to get a professional product from me. And it worked very well.
Right. When you were running that company, what was one of the biggest challenges that you had to overcome?
Trying to do my own bookkeeping. Honestly, I mean, it was really a struggle for me. I used to always say, and my sister started doing some bookkeeping for me, and I used to tell her, you know what, I'll go out and make the money. You manage it so I can keep making the money. And so that system worked out really, really well.
You and I are totally cut from the same cloth.
Yep.
So I had shared with you, just for the listeners, I shared earlier before we started this call that as our business has grown, we find that I, as the owner, sometimes move away from what I'm really great at, which is strategy and marketing, and have to do tasks like bookkeeping. But I have to tell you, I also hired my sister to do bookkeeping.
Oh, that's funny.
It is so great. I mean, in her dream world, if she could just do Excel spreadsheets all day long, she would be the happiest person on the planet. For me, looking at Excel spreadsheets, I'm like, oh, no, this is not, where are the words?
Oh, God. It wasn't until I was in grad school and I was doing quantitative analysis for mass media that I started to appreciate Excel. And I had to learn how to use the other side of my brain, which, of course, working for a tech company, you have to do that anyway. It was just the whole overwhelming idea of, I could put a budget together and say to a client, this is how much it's going to cost, and these are the different services. But when it came to just writing all of that down in a place, like a balance sheet, it was, I can't face it. I would call my sister, and she was there in a heartbeat. So it worked out really great.
That's amazing. So that was one of your biggest challenges. What was one of your biggest highlights or successes or things that you're most proud of?
I had been doing a lot of publishing earlier in my career, so I decided to focus a lot on catalogs work, and that's what kind of drew me into doing golfwear. And the biggest success that I had was I had a friend who actually was in the golf business, and she had started her own business as well, but just, in her house, and it grew it to a very, very large golf clothing company. And then she sold it and went into partnership with Clint Eastwood.
Oh, wow.
And I was able to, she called me up and said, I want you to come to Carmel, and I'd like you to do the catalog for our golf clothing line. And I said, yes, how fast can I get a plane ticket? And I was there. So for 5 years, I worked on that account, and it was really, really a great opportunity for me. And I learned a lot doing that.
Right. How did you make the shift from owning your own company to working for a Fortune 500 company?
Well, I decided that I needed a little bit more background. It's like I had done all of this work in marketing and advertising, and I did it instinctively. I didn't know what the theory was behind communication. I didn't know what the theories were behind marketing. I only knew how to do it. So I thought, I need to go back and get a baccalaureate degree in communication and a master's. So I went back to school and got a master's degree in international and intercultural communication with an emphasis on digital media. So that was really where my interest started to shift. And I really liked the platforms of, reaching across time and space, really using the internet. So that's pretty much how I got started. And I was pinged by, this other entrepreneur called me because he had seen my profile on LinkedIn, asking me to do social media for recruiting. I had never done it before, but the concept was very, it was like PR. Let's combine PR and marketing together.
Right.
So I started working with him and pushing out, his company, which was a small recruiting company. And so that kind of got me on the road to doing social media, which I found I really, really liked. And so I just, learned as much as I could. I'm always looking for new things that are happening in social media and the trends that are going on out there and how to use social media effectively for paid media campaigns as well as organic campaigns. So I was able to take that background, and just a friend of mine sent me a job description, and she said, you know what, I think you'd be really good for this position. So I answered the job description and got a call within a couple of hours and was hired within a week.
Wow.
So it worked out very well. It worked out
the line. That's great. You know what's so interesting is, and you tell me, but from my perspective, it seems like social media and some of these digital platforms have completely changed recruiting processes. They have completely changed it. What's happened is that the talent pool is very small, and especially in the tech area. Okay. Very hard to find some niche positions, people for niche positions, but that are very specialized. And in order to do that, you do a lot of sourcing in social media. Okay. And you feel like an investigative reporter. Okay, let's go see what this person's profile says and what have they done in the past. Because often the best people, the most high quality people that you'll get are people who are already employed. So we refer to as the passive candidate. So social media is really critical for doing that. They may see something online that, you don't actually need to call them up and say, hey, I want to recruit you. They may see something online that they look at as the branding platform for the company, and then they go look you up on Glassdoor and LinkedIn and make sure that you're the kind of company that they would want to work for. So social media is very important. Yeah, and I think, so one thing I don't share often, but I think it sort of fits into this conversation, is one of my first jobs out of college was actually working downtown Chicago at a recruiting firm. And two things. One, I must say, I probably wasn't that great at it at the time. I think if I came back to that company now, I would be a much better resource for them. But I think I was just very young and green and didn't necessarily understand the landscape. But at that time, so that was early 2000s or so, the way that I wanted to recruit was more through LinkedIn. And that was more of an emerging platform, and it wasn't quite proven at the time. And so I remember my manager saying, get off the computer, get out the door, and go to an event. So I love how far we've come in the digital space of these platforms are wonderful for sourcing people and for networking and starting to build that relationship. And they really are. I agree. And social media has come a long way since then. Yeah. There are a lot more platforms that are niche platforms that most people don't even know about, that people that are specialized in the tech field
go to, like Quora or Stack Overflow or GitHub. So there are some other, avenues. Everybody thinks mostly of Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, but there are other social media channels that are out there and available if you have somebody who knows how to do that. And personally, I have never been a recruiter in my entire life.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I just understand people. And having, been in a career woman for so many years and having seen how people respond to certain triggers, either in language or visually, has been really helpful in transferring those skills over to social media.
Right. That makes sense. So if you had a list of best kept secrets, whether they're websites, books, or TED Talks, what would you recommend and why?
Oh, God. Best kept secrets. That's hard to say. I've read so many books, and I don't know that there's any one. I do think that Guy Kawasaki is an incredible leader in social media. And I did buy his book that he co-wrote with Peg. I can't remember her last name.
Okay.
But they co-wrote this great book about social media and getting started with social media. And it's very basic. So if you don't have a lot of background in marketing and public relations or understand how social media can work for you, it's a good read.
That's a good suggestion. Okay, so as we close, the final thing that I'd love to hear from you is what is on your radar, or what's sort of a trend or hot topic that you're focused on right now that you think we'll all be talking about in about a year from now?
I think we'll all be talking about interactive video.
Oh, okay.
People are doing a lot of video. It's got a lot of popularity, especially in mobile applications. But interactive video is going to really come to the forefront.
And are you referring to like live streaming through Facebook or Blab or Periscope?
Something like that, along the lines of that. But actually, interactive video gives the viewer the opportunity to actually interact with the video, either by participating. It's sort of a combination of video production and gaming, and I think it's going to become more and more popular as time goes by.
Oh, that's fascinating. Well, I'll keep my eyes out for that. That sounds fun.
Yeah, do. Yeah, keep your eyes open. It's going to be coming soon.
Yes. Well, very good. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.
You're welcome.